Welcome to Midland Money Mindset, your weekly dose of inspiration and insights to ensure you enjoy each step of your journey. Whether you're saving for the future, planning your next big adventure, or simply looking to add more joy to your life, you've come to the right place. Now, let's dive in.
Well, I have the pleasure today of being with Breanna Blaney, the VP of Life Invested at Dimensional Fund Advisors. I'm so happy to have you on the show, Breanna. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. It's going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, I saw you talk at Shift and Shift 2024, and I
Mhm.
really enjoyed the presentation, the conversation you had on stage, and I was like, this really fits in with what the Midland Money Mindset's all about and joy. So I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. And before we jump into what you're doing today with Dimensional Fund Advisors and your role there, can you share with our listeners a little bit about your path, the background, and how you got to where you are today? Because I think people are so fascinated with the journey sometimes.
Absolutely. I think that's what makes all of us special, right? Special and unique is our journey along the way. So my journey has really been one of, in many ways, like coming home to myself and really trying to understand, who am I and why am I here? And about a decade ago, I started down the path of finance and also yoga and more mindfulness, meditation. And for many years, I saw those two things as completely separate from one another, couldn't be opposite. And the path that it's taken me down is really realizing that they're much more integrated than people often might think. And that's really what has led me to where I am today at Dimensional, running our Life Invested platform.
Amazing. Now, you mentioned it, and I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper because I think it's so valuable for people to understand this. How do you feel your personal interests in mindfulness, yoga, and meditation are in alignment with what you do today, your professional career, as in investments, as an investment manager?
Yeah, it's fascinating because yoga is really the science of self realization. It's the science of understanding who you are, and all of these techniques around mindfulness or meditation are really about helping you as a human being discern, what is important to you and how do you really want to create your life, and how can you do that from a place of more calm and ease. And really, when you think about money in many ways, money is this tool that we have that can help us create our lives and create and do the things that we want. And investing, what we do at Dimensional, allows you to use your money to invest in your future to do more of those things. And so, really, I used to think about those things as two separate worlds, when in reality, when we can use techniques in the yoga, meditation, mindfulness space to understand ourselves, it actually allows us to use our money in ways that are more aligned. We can discover, understand what our values are and why we're really here, what we want to create, and then we can use our money and our investments to actually fuel those.
I mean, do you think that's something where people fall down on in terms of, they are inundated with the fact that they have to save and put away for retirement, right? And they're inundated with the numbers and the financial aspects of things, but there aren't many folks talking out there about that intersection. And is that what causes the problem? Because we haven't really educated people about this, that they're not really self-aware or aware that there has or should be this link between the two.
I personally, absolutely, I very much agree. I think as a society, really from an early age, we are kind of inundated with money. We see that in our family dynamics. We see it all around us. We see it in the media. And often the culture is just more and more and more. Money is going to bring me happiness. What do you want to do in your life? I want to make money. I want to be successful. And we're just defining money in many ways as like equivalent with success. If I have a successful life, well, then that means that I'm going to make a lot of money. And I would, ask your listeners to really take a pause and think about that. be like, huh, is that really what success means to me? Is that really what's going to bring me joy and fulfillment in my life? And what I found in my own personal journey, going through this myself and helping many others do the same, is that money can be a tool to help create more of the things we want to do in our lives. But when we don't ask ourselves why first, then we're just consistently chasing something that we don't even know if we want to be chasing.
Yeah, I agree. That was one of the chapters in my book, Know Your Why, I think, and it was one of the first chapters because if you don't have that, everything else is a little bit more difficult. So I
Absolutely. I
agree
think
with
that's
you.
the first step.
Right, right. In 2022, you worked closely with the Dimensional Funds founder, David Booth, on his quest to change the world, the way the world feels about investing. And that project became the Life Invested platform. How do you hope to elevate and reshape the investment conversation?
So I've worked at Dimensional for the past 6 years. And when I found Dimensional, I was kind of at a crossroads in my life. I had been doing a lot in the yoga and meditation mindfulness space, and also been working in the private equity, and had worked at State Street. And I wasn't sure. I was kind of at that crossroads and that place of conflict. How do these two worlds align? Is being in finance really aligned with my own purpose and my own passion and what I really want to create in the world? And when I found Dimensional, I was really enamored in many ways by their mission to change the way the world feels about investing. And I ended up working with many financial advisors like you for years. And a couple of years ago, I really started seeing this intersection in a much clearer way. And it turned out that none other than our founder, David Booth, had been thinking about many similar things. And he had coined this term life invested and was starting to build a platform that really helps people explore this intersection between life and investing. And so that's exactly what I'm doing now, is really creating tools, resources, and ultimately kind of a new language to speak about money and investing in ways that are much more approachable for people. Like you said earlier, so much of the media and what we're taught, it can feel ungraspable. It feels like out of reach, and I don't understand. And so it can be easy to, feel shut down and to feel confused or just push it aside. And really, what we're trying to do with Life Invested is reshape the conversation about investing so that you feel empowered about your money and you're using it to really fuel your life goals.
And what are you seeing, in terms of adoption of this, by both advisors as well as, the end investor, the families they serve? What's the feedback that you've gotten up into this point? And, is there, a type of adoption rate in terms of people using this?
Well, I think as a whole, when we think about Dimensional from the onset, Dimensional was really built around a core philosophy. We have one investment philosophy at Dimensional, and it's really based around the science of investing. And even from that perspective, the adoption of the amount of people in the world who really understand the science of investing or have a strong philosophy around investing is probably very small. I mean, we like to say like less than 1%. The adoption rate is so low. And really, our mission is to get that message out to more people, that investing doesn't have to be this thing that is approachable. It doesn't have to be this guessing game, that you can really have a sensible approach to investing. And it's very similar to a sensible approach to life. So when you think about, Dimensional's investment philosophy as a whole, the adoption rate, I think it's still pretty small. There's huge opportunity there. And then also just more of this mindset around investing, using your money as a tool to fuel your life. I think we're still in the very early innings of that really being adopted by financial advisors. I'd say many people in the Dimensional community have been doing that for many years. But I think that there's a huge opportunity for us to really completely revolutionize the way that we view money in our society. And I view this as really a core step and cornerstone of doing that.
Yeah, and I think part of the challenge is, right, the average age of an advisor today. I think as we approach some of those younger advisors, it's probably going to become more and more table stakes to be having these conversations, because I think they're really the ones kind of leading the charge in regard to having these types of conversations. And it's partially, not the older generation's fault. It was so new. It wasn't really part of the conversation. So I think you're right. I think we're going to see more and more of this, especially I think the younger investing public is demanding it. And it's going to be important for us as advisors to become more in tune to having those conversations and talking about that. And I think one of the definite starting points of that is knowing your why, which we talked a little bit about before. And I think one of the challenges there is most people don't have a why for their life, right? They don't have a why as far as why they're doing what they're doing, or working where they're working, or living where they're living. So that makes it a challenge when you want to have a conversation about why for their money. It's something unique. So, why, to you, why is it so important that people connect their financial circumstances to that why? I mean, I think you and I agree it's paramount that they do. What's the reasoning there for them as, our listeners?
Well, I think it really starts with almost where you began, which is that you can either kind of allow life to lead you in any which direction, and just kind of take whatever external noise is out there and it leads you down that path, or you can really put yourself in the driver's seat of your own life and create your life. And I think many people out there, it's not necessarily that we're not trying to be the creator of our lives, but it just kind of happens. Life can pass you by. You might, it starts even at an early age. You're in high school and your parents are telling you they think that you should do growing up. And so you just decide, okay, well, that's what I'm going to do. And there's not a lot of that self-reflection and the questioning of, well, what do I really enjoy? What are my passions? What are my gifts? And, why do I really want to do these things? And what am I here to actually create? And so I really do think that is, that's the first step, is having one of those aha moments. And for me, it was through yoga and mindfulness, but it doesn't have to necessarily be through that. I think many people that come to these various inflection points in their lives, and the light turns on and they're like, okay, I really want to create my life and put myself in the driver's seat. And once you've done that, you can then really align your money to do those things. And, you asked about, well, why is it so important to align your money with your values? And that really, I think, comes back to when you don't do that, when you don't align your money with your values, then there's a lot of stress, often a lot of tension. You might be chasing and saving for this big home or a boat or the car. And in reality, you don't even really want that thing. Maybe you end up getting the car and you buy the car and you drive it for 2 months and it didn't really bring you all that much satisfaction. And so then again, you're chasing the next thing. Where in turn, if you first start with your why, and then you align your money to that why, and you purchase things that are really going to fuel the things that you want to do, then ultimately that's going to lead to higher life satisfaction. And that's what it really all comes back to.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think we need more people. I think that's a course we need to have in our educational system. I don't know that it'll ever happen. So I really think it's up to us as parents to kind of instill that. I think, it goes back to that. And I don't know the specific study, but I know there was like a Harvard study many, many years ago that showed those people or kids who started goal setting very early on and were mindful about that were much more successful later on in life. And I think starting that kind of why conversation or thought process and then aligning your money, it'll just set you up to be better as a person and more guided, and also better financially set and sound, because you'll have all of those things working in your best interest at the same time. So I think they're very much aligned.
Absolutely. It's kind of like you've got to get all these pieces rowing in the same direction. And when you get them rowing in the same direction, well, then you're with the current. And
Right.
if you don't have them rowing in the same direction, then you're kind of constantly fighting upstream. And so, I say if you're feeling that constant sense of you're battling everything in your life, then often it's an indication to take a step back and really think about, okay, well, why might this be happening? And how can I start to align so that things do start to flow? And money is a huge piece of that, aligning all of your resources, your time, money, and energy so that it's flowing with the direction, and your why is really your North Star.
Yeah, agreed. Carson Group has been doing a lot of work to try to help, our industry, our profession, which is historically male dominated. And some of the ways they've been doing that is by creating the Women in Wealth Report. They've
Mhm.
also had Excel Represent. They've also created a women's CEO strategy, which came out last year, which is fantastic. I think it was an eye opener for a lot of the families we work with. They didn't realize how many big companies are run by women CEOs. And, that's something we can offer them. What advice do you have for women who are in our historically male dominated profession, or really any profession that's currently male dominated? What advice do you have for them?
Well, congratulations for doing all of that. And it's always inspiring to me to just see how I think our industry as a whole is starting to change more. And there's firms like Carson and otherwise who are really putting a lot of resources behind trying to bring more equality into the industry, which is amazing. And I would say my advice is number one, it can be challenging. I think it's important to just recognize, there are inherent challenges that are present in that, but that really it kind of comes back to the sense that in that challenge also lies an incredible opportunity. Dimensional started our Women in Wealth Committee back, or Women in Wealth Community back in 2015. And since I've joined Dimensional, I've been on our steering committee. And that community was really founded on this foundational question of, is serving women different? And the answer that we, found through talking to thousands of advisors was yes, serving women is different. And so when I think about the challenge that it can pose this in the workplace or otherwise, it's really the sense that men and women are different. We have different biology and each of us are incredibly unique. So you can't just categorize all women together, all men together by any means. Yet there are certain unique needs when you think about financial planning for women and lifespan and all of those things. There are unique needs of female professionals, just like I think that there are unique needs of some female employees. And so I really think it's all about how do we elevate this conversation? How do we continue to honor those differences and that uniqueness, but also really kind of come back to the shared mission, which I think for many of us in finance is to help people live better lives.
Right. And that includes women and employees, like you said, and investors. It's really all of the above. How do you feel about the progress that's been made thus far in our profession in your, what'd you say, 6 years, right, at Dimensional? How do you feel things have changed today versus 6 years ago when you started here? Do you feel like the rock, or the boulder, I should say, is moving?
I do. I mean, I personally, my experience at Dimensional, when I've seen particularly our Women in Wealth community, I mean, we have now thousands of women in our Women in Wealth community, female advisors, and they're serving, I mean, thousands of their own female clients. And so that to me has been incredibly inspiring. We held our first Women in Wealth Summit last year. We had a second one this past May. And I've spoken at both. And you look out of this crowd and you see just all of these female advisors who are so activated around serving primarily women in their practices. And that to me is a huge sign that we are headed in the right direction. I mean, we didn't have that when I started at Dimensional. And I think that many other asset managers and advisors, we're all starting to see that shift. And I think recognize some of this nuance and customization that is often needed when we're serving really any person, but particularly maybe some of these populations that have been underserved in the past.
Yeah, I agree. And I think sometimes things, well, I think all the time, things don't move as quickly as we want. So sometimes we have to just kind of take a step back, look backwards, and see where we were, where we are today, and kind of appreciate the progress that we made, even though we all probably wanted it to happen a lot faster than it actually is. But that's life sometimes too, right?
Yeah, I don't want to misquote this, but I was on Instagram and I saw this post by Sarah Blakely, and she was talking about the when women were actually allowed to get a business loan by themselves without having a male co-signing. And I think she said it was something, it was in the 70s or 80s. And I think it was, maybe I think it was early 80s, maybe. But it was crazy to me, regardless. I mean, that's what, not even 50 years that
Mm-hmm.
women have been able to get a small business loan by themselves. And so when you think about that in the context of where we are today and the opportunities that I've had in a financial firm, all of that, it is very inspiring. But there is obviously still a lot more work to be done.
Sure.
And that starts with each of us as
There
individuals
you
really
go.
being able to champion that.
Yeah, it's all about perspective sometimes. So, I've heard you say that being true to yourself is your superpower. What do you mean by that?
It kind of goes back to what we were talking about when you come to your why and the uniqueness that we all hold as human beings. You know, it's pretty wild when you think about the fact that there will never be anyone to walk this earth exactly like you, ever. And often with social media and otherwise, it can be so easy to start to conform to try and be like someone else. And I think we see this constantly with money as well. We're comparing ourselves to the house next door or the neighbors we were around when we grew up. And that again kind of leads to a life of chasing and often I think tension and stress. And so the invitation is to really turn that around and actually honor the fact that there's never going to be anyone that is like you. And so it's really your superpower is leaning into what makes you as a human being unique. And I think when you own that and really lean into that, that is also what is going to bring you the most abundance in your life, as when you're really activated on what inspires you, what lights you up, that's the value you're going to be bringing into the world. And ultimately, money is just an exchange of value.
Yeah, and I just had this conversation today, literally, with somebody about paying yourself first,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a concept that's been around forever. It's been talked about, and I always position it as we are the most important people, kind of along the same lines. We're the most important people in our own lives, but
Mm-hmm.
so many of us have a tendency to pay everybody else first. And this person I was talking to said, well, at the end of the month, if I have a little bit left over, then I look at different areas to put these funds. And I'm like, well, you're hardly ever going to have that. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, if you wait to see what's left over, I assure you probably have a higher propensity that you're going to spend most, if not all, that money because you're going to live to that maximization and you're not going to have anything left over. I said, what you have to do is turn that mindset upside down and think of yourself as the most important person in your own life and pay yourself first and make those investments and those savings vehicles first and then pay everybody else with what's left over. And if you can't today, figure out a way to do that. And I think that pretty much speaks to something very similar, small example of what we're talking about, but I think yet it is an example of what you're kind of talking about.
Absolutely. I love that concept of paying yourself first. And I think about it from the sense too of if you aren't filling yourself up, if you aren't paying yourself first, taking care of your own needs, then you're constantly likely going to be running in a state of depletion. It's like if you think about a water glass and it's empty, you didn't pay yourself first, there's no water in it, and then you're trying to pour into others, it's going to be really hard. There's no water in the glass. But if you pay yourself first and that water glass is filled up, you can even keep pouring, water into that. It's going to overflow and you're going to start naturally outpouring that into others around you. And so I love that concept. Great advice. And definitely, I mean, I do that in my own life. I think about that from money, but also just time and energy. How are you paying
Yeah.
yourself first? And then how is that going to really pay dividends to everyone else in your life? And it's not really selfish, but it's really of service to others.
Oh, it makes everything better, right? We talk a lot about on the show the three-legged stool, right? Having financial health, mental health, and physical health. And if, to your point, if that glass is depleted in any one of those three areas, it certainly affects all the others, right? If you don't feel like you're financially secure, you're probably not going to go out and take care of yourself physically. Mentally, you're probably not feeling at your top, and it has that filtering effect that goes through all those areas. So it's very important to make sure that you're taking care of each of those areas and not being depleted. Now
Yeah.
we're all about joy on the Midland Money Mindset and finding joy in the journey, but that can be easier said than done sometimes. What are your top three tips to help others enjoy the journey?
I love the word joy, and it's one that I've kind of spent a lot of time with. And to me, joy is really this like innate sense of awe and bliss that we can find in ourselves and also various things in life. And it doesn't necessarily have to be always these like crazy blissful experiences. I've also found a lot of joy in painful moments. I remember when my grandfather passed away, it was really really sad, but I also had this like sense of joy and like this fact that he was at peace. And I don't know, I was just really surrounded by that sense of joy and love. And so when I think about finding joy in my own life, my first tip is that it is a mindset. It does start as you waking up every day and choosing joy. I'm going to choose to find joy in my life today. The second would be is to really create joy and find joy in the mundane things. Right? You can have a joyful cup of coffee. You can have a joyful walk. You can choose to walk down your street in the morning and see all of the joy that innately surrounds you, and the flowers and the birds chirping, all of those things. And then the last one would be to really find the joy in yourself, to really sit with that. And whether that's in meditation or mindfulness practices or even surfing, it's what really brings you joy as a human being, and how do you keep tapping into that over and over again so that can innately again kind of flow from you and into the world around you.
Yeah, I think those are great points and great ideas. And I think I would say that it's not something that you can wake up tomorrow and say, I'm going to do all this and it's going to work right away. It's something that you have to, hone the skill and get better and better at doing that every day. And, over time, I think you'll see the effects, right?
That's the power of compounding. I mean, we think
Right.
about that in markets and money and all of the fact that these little things add up every day. And I see that, and you see that in joy, and we see that in money, and that's really again just those parallels that we see between life and investing, and how cool and special that is.
Yeah, James Clear, Atomic Habits, right? 1% better every day. That's all. And talking about that, so after trying and failing a number of times, I now meditate. I
Yep.
went through this process that I tried to do it, and I was like, I'm horrible at this. I tried to do it, and I'm like, getting off track. And then as I started to talk to other people who do this regularly and are successful at it, probably like yourself, I came to learn that everybody gets distracted during meditation. All the things I was experiencing was commonplace. It just didn't feel like it. I felt like I should be in the zone and zen and not hearing anything else or seeing, but that's not the case. What tips do you have for those like me who have struggled to sit in those moments with themselves while they're meditating?
Well, number one, like you said, it's completely normal. I mean, we think we're like anything, whether it's running a marathon or any big challenge in life. It doesn't happen kind of overnight. But I will say that to me, meditation is really getting in this state of real clarity with yourself. And there's so many kind of definitions of meditation, different techniques out there. But I almost like to broaden what meditation really means, because to me, it is that. It's like, how do you get in this state of connection with yourself so you can clearly understand, why am I here? What do I want to do, create in my life? And yes, there's the physical practice of meditation, like we often think sitting cross legged on the floor, meditating. But I also think that you can find meditative states and a lot of other things, whether it's walking or surfing. And so I would, one, encourage you to completely understand that it is normal. Two, potentially try and find other things too that allow you to be in more of those meditative states, because when you repeat that pattern, again, with the power of compounding, that's going to add up over time. And then three, it is dedication and commitment. The first time I sat down to meditate, my mind was going crazy. It's going wild. And it's normal because there's so much noise in our external world. It's very rare that we are actually in silence with ourselves. And so that can be a pretty jarring experience. I've taken many days of silence, and that's a recommendation or an invitation as well. And it can be really eye-opening of what actually comes up because you are in this state of stillness and silence. And so just lean into it. Lean into that uncomfortability a little bit and keep showing back up. And it doesn't happen overnight. It can take months. It can take years to really allow yourself to get more comfortable with being in that silent state. You're not really trying to push out your thoughts. You're really just trying to move through it. So how do you kind of invite in and open to that uncomfortability instead of turn off and away from it?
Yeah, great points. And like I said, it really was from this show and talking to several people who meditated and had done it a lot longer than I had, and listening to them and taking their advice to continue to do it, even though I felt like I was doing it wrong or struggling. But I find it pretty enjoyable. So I'm going to continue. I try to uh, add more time to it. I even start like 10 minutes a day. And I think that there are other ways that you can incorporate it, like you said, like walking or surfing. There are definitely other ways that you can incorporate that in your life. Now, so listen, we're all about joy here, and we ask each of our guests we ask each of them this last question, which is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
Ooh. Well, I will say two things. One, my partner has been gone. He's been gone for 2 months. So he got home last night and we woke up this morning, and just being in his presence and with him, that was really, really joyful for me. And then the second thing is what we were talking about previously, which was my morning practice. Every morning, I'm very, very diligent about having some sort of self-connection practice. And mine did include meditation this morning, as it typically does. And that really, I think, just set me up for success. It got me tapped into who I really am and why I want to be here. And hopefully that, showed through today in our conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it, and thank you for all this great information and experience sharing. I appreciate it. Now we're going to have all of your information in the show notes, Bree. But if people want to learn more about you, about the Life Invested program at Dimensional Fund Advisors, or want to reach out, what's the easiest and the best place for them to do that?
Always feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's a great place. I'm trying to be more active there, share more stories. So that's a great place to start. And then check out us.dimensional.com. We have a wealth of resources on our site, Foundations of Investing, really talking about how do you start to connect some of these life principles like tuning out the noise, power of compounding, to investment principles and vice versa, so that you can really educate yourself and start to see more of that alignment and flow there. And then lastly, we have recently launched a movie called Tune Out the Noise, and that can be another great place. I think we can include the link to that probably in the show notes, hopefully. And that could be a great place to just learn more about Dimensional, about the philosophy that we really espouse and that I personally live by.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I appreciate you taking out the time for sharing your experiences and what you guys are doing at Dimensional Fund Advisors with our audience. I appreciate it, and enjoy the day.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Talk soon.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Midland Money Mindset. Remember, it's not just about the money, it's finding joy in the journey and embracing the right mindset. If you love the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Don't forget to follow along for more tips and inspiration. Please visit the social links below to connect with Larry or his guests. Until next time, keep smiling, keep thriving, and remember to think about, what did you do today that brought you joy?